So, 2 years in from the Eli Manning eligibility for the Hall of Fame, and yet it looks like there's another controversy. And oh, by the way, the NFL's coaching carousel continues to produce another shakeup. We'll talk about these things and more next on the Big Blue Breakdown Live. Hi again, everybody. Paul Dottino back with you on another edition of the Big Blue Breakdown Live here on the New York Giants on SI YouTube channel and Media Network. So glad you could join us tonight. And, well, look, I'm just so glad that we were able to get out from under 14 inches of snow here in the New York metropolitan area over the weekend. Although now, after you shoveled all of that snow and made all those big piles and you had all of those snow drifts, we now have ice all over the place. And I have absolutely no idea if this stuff is going to melt before training camp. We're just going to have to see. But I'm praying that by July, all of this white stuff is gone. Heck, they're even saying in this area that we may have a little bit more snow coming up on Sunday morning. But that's for another day. We have so much to talk about tonight. And I had a couple of angles that I was thinking about in doing this evening's show. And basically, as I was trying to ruffle through a bunch of different ideas of what I kind of wanted to talk about, if I was going to have a theme, if I was going to have a guest, well, the news of the last 48 hours, or 36 hours, heck, even 24 hours, basically blew everything up and made me decide, okay, no sense in getting a scout on to talk about the Shrine Bowl or a scout on to talk about Senior Bowl practices. Why would we do that? We have so many other headlines to dip into. So let's just take a second to set the stage. Because, folks, I'm going to be here for at least an hour tonight. As I always say, we'll do at least an hour. If you guys really demand it, and if you're still popping with your questions and your comments, we'll go for an hour and a half. We'll do 90 minutes. But we're certainly going to be here for at least an hour. I can't imagine that we won't have stuff to talk about for at least 60 minutes. But in any event, let's quickly go through the number of things that I was thinking about going into this program. Number one, we know that the New York Giants are trying to assemble a coaching staff. And it was assumed throughout publications and national media around the country that the Giants were going to hire Todd Monken, the Ravens offensive coordinator, who has a good reputation with young quarterbacks, has a varied offense, and works well with mobile quarterbacks. Phil Simms explained all of that stuff to me last week when I spoke with him, and I listened to his dissertation on Monken. Well, of course, everybody knew the hitch was that Monken might get a job offer from the Cleveland Browns to become their next head coach. Lo and behold, that happened today. Todd Monken is now the next head coach of the Cleveland Browns. Pivot New York Giants. Apparently, Todd Monken is also bringing the Ravens offensive line coach with him to Cleveland, according to the reports coming out of the Browns camp, Monken's camp, and the national media. That's an interesting development because one would have assumed, again, we don't know this, that if Todd Monken had come to the Giants and joined John Harbaugh on that trek from Baltimore to New York, one would assume that Monken probably would have brought his offensive line coach to Big Blue. So, that now leaves the OC job still open, the offensive line coach job still open, and oh, by the way, there were reportedly 5 Ravens staff members over the course of the last week or so that, according to newspaper reports, are supposed to join John Harbaugh with the Giants. The following people are Ravens special teams coordinator Chris Horton, assistant linebackers coach Matt Pease, offensive quality control coach Adam Schrack, defensive quality control coach Brendan Clark, and football analyst Noah Riley. Those 5 were reportedly, according to the newspaper accounts, going to come from Baltimore and join the Giants. Horton apparently is the only one who was going to keep his same position as special teams coordinator. Nobody seemed to know if the other 4 guys would have the same titles they had with the Ravens or if they would have different titles with the Giants, if in fact they landed here. Why does the Todd Monken agreement with Cleveland become so incredibly interesting? Well, because the Giants' policy is not to announce an official hiring until the hiring is complete. That is, the person has signed their contract and they actually are now a Giants employee. The Giants have not made any comment, either nay or yay, on any of these assistant coaches on the staff. I do not know, and I'm making this clear, folks, and you know this, one of my great phrases that I've lived by in my entire career is the smartest people know what they don't know. Do not assume anything, and do not be a fraud and perpetuate an assumption to your listeners or your readers. I do not know if any of those 5 people that were reported to be coming to the Giants have actually joined the Giants. Which leads me to the very obvious question. Is it possible that one or more of those 5 people who have been so reported were holding off signing anything because maybe they wanted to know where Todd Monken was going, and maybe one or more of those 5 people might decide that they would like to go to the Cleveland Browns? I don't think anybody out there listening to this show knows the answer to that. I know I certainly don't. And I'm man enough to admit it. Because there has been no official notification that any of these people have signed a contract with the Giants. So the Todd Monken agreement with the Cleveland Browns, and the Browns themselves did put out on social media that they have hired Todd Monken as their head coach. So I'm assuming, I don't know what their policy is, I'm assuming that they have, and again, I tell you I don't like to assume, well, with the Browns announcing the addition of Todd Monken, I don't know what their policy is. Do they need a handshake? Do they need a signed contract? Do they need a verbal? I would think they need a signed contract to make that statement on social media and on their website. I would think that their standard of a deal is like what the Giants is. And the Giants will always tell you a deal is not a deal until it's a done deal. So I think it's important, very, very important, to be aware that Todd Monken going to the Browns means the Giants' OC job is still open. It means the offensive line job is still open. We know the defensive coordinator's job. We believe, and again, there has been no official announcement that Denard Wilson, the reported guy who has taken the job from the Titans, That has still not been confirmed or denied by anyone in the organization. So, where are we? And where are the Giants? Do they still need an OC, an O-line coach, and might they still need some of these 5 positions that so many people reported were going to be filled? We don't know. And that's the beauty of being truthful and factual. When you don't hide behind sources, where you don't hide behind people say, or I was told, really, it's got to be signed. When it's signed, it's done. We talk about this on Big Blue Kickoff Live all the time. It is an official Giants show on the Giants social media network and website. So obviously, there is a standard there. A deal is not done till it's signed. Well, I actually happen to agree with that philosophy. And so I bring the same philosophy here to this program. Now, I will talk a little bit more in terms of the reports, perhaps, than I will on the daytime show, because this is a Sports Illustrated forum. It is not a team forum. It is a Sports Illustrated forum. But I still go by the same core philosophy. The facts are the facts. And let's live and drive our thoughts by the facts, not by assumptions and hypotheticals. We believe that Charlie Bullen has been retained as the outside linebackers coach. We believe that Tim Kelly has been retained as the tight ends coach. We believe that Robert Prince, the Dolphins wide receivers coach, has been interviewed for offensive coordinator. And we believe, based on, again, what has been in the papers, that Davis Webb, the pass game coordinator of the Broncos, has been sought out. The Giants have asked for permission to talk to Davis Webb about the offensive coordinator's job. So that's where we stand right now. And I think my question to you folks, and it's certainly a very important question, because I don't know. I really don't know where all this is going to land. So I'm asking you, where do you want it to land? I'll give you an example. I said today on the Big Blue Kickoff show, if it were me, I'm not telling you what the Giants are doing or what I want them to do. I'm telling you, if it were me, I would put in calls to guys like Cliff Kingsbury for the OC job, Joe Lombardi for the OC job. I would call Charlie Weis Jr., who was at Ole Miss, then moved his OC job with Lane Kiffin to LSU. And according to the Jets writers, apparently, was asked if he wanted to interview for the Jets OC job, and he said, no, thanks. He withdrew. Said he was going to be happy staying at LSU. Well, if I were making this decision for my team, and I had a young franchise quarterback who knew Charlie Weis Jr. very well, and Charlie Weis Jr.'s dad was a long time, or at least successful member, if not long, but certainly for some years, a successful member of my organization, I would have to put in a call to him, and I would have to talk to him and say, well, we're clearly not the Jets. We clearly have a better situation. There's a background here with your family and my team. What would you think about having a conversation? In other words, let's make this short and sweet. He would have to say no to me for me to back off. I would absolutely make a phone call. And until he said to me, no thank you, and hung up the phone, I would see what I could do about making some kind of arrangement with Charlie Weiss Jr. If it were me. But it's not me. And I want to make that clear. I am not speaking for anybody on the second floor of the New York Giants offices. Now, there are other guys. We mentioned Lombardi. You mentioned Kingsbury. They've certainly got some notches on their belts. They've been OCs and quarterbacks coaches and had some success in this league with some pretty high-profile QBs over the years. So, there are other candidates to speak with who have a more significant NFL resume. But for me, Charlie Weiss Jr., there's a lot of connections there, and I think I would like to make that phone call, if it were me. Okay? I leave you with that. And as far as the rest of the dominoes on the staff, that's anybody's guess right now. Because we truthfully don't know how many of those slots are actually filled today. We have reports of people, but we don't know. This is going to be very interesting. All right. So that's where that storyline lies. And we've gone almost 15 minutes into the program discussing that one. A little bit later on, if you like, I took a very hard look at the Shrine game, the Shrine Bowl last night, and I picked out a player or two at the key positions that I think the Giants might be looking for. We've discussed it, right? Wide receiver, interior offensive line, defensive line, and cornerback. We've talked about it. Those are the four positions thinnest on the Giants depth chart. So I looked at those positions very carefully in the Shrine Bowl last night, and I wrote down some thoughts about some players that I'm just going to keep an eye on, and I'm going to keep them in the back of my head. And we all know that the Shrine Bowl will only have a handful of guys potentially taken on the second day of the draft in rounds 2 and 3. We understand that, okay? Because it is a day 3 all-star game, is what it really is. There's a slew of day 3 guys in that game. But that doesn't mean that a 4th and 5th round pick can't do some really important things for your team. So I do think it was a relevant exercise to go through. And I'm not saying that any of the guys that I will discuss with you later from the Shrine Bowl are going to be stars per se. But they will be guys that I will be keeping an eye on as the draft process continues in April. And I'll be very interested to see where they land, because I thought that I saw some talent there that potentially could help the Giants depth chart should they feel so inclined to take a few of those players. All right, so we're about 20 minutes into the program. I see a bunch of your chats over here. So let me just say this. I know the Senior Bowl is this weekend. They've had a couple of practice sessions already. I'm not so much interested in talking about Senior Bowl in this program because the game is coming up this weekend. Once we get the full selection of winners and losers from the week and from the game, I think maybe next week might be a better opportunity to talk about some of those folks. I'm more interested in just discussing some Shrine guys in tonight's program. And I may wind up getting a scout on next week too, who can give us the lowdown and the scoop after both of the All-Star games. I think that might be valuable for you guys. So I'm thinking about doing that. Of course, all the coaching news could trump that, and we may wind up doing another a coach-centric show next Wednesday. That's always a possibility too. We just don't know right now. Okay. So there's that. And then there's the other item, which I led with in the tease. And I buried it now here on purpose because it's something that's going to make me very angry. And I don't want to get too hot. I was hot today on Big Blue Kickoff Live. And as I said to both Mark Malusis and John Schmelk, who's at the Senior Bowl, I was so hot, I felt like I could melt the ice in East Rutherford. I was that hot about it. Bill Belichick is a slam dunk Hall of Famer, and it is ridiculous, absurd, embarrassing for him not to get voted into the Hall of Fame as soon as he was eligible. And I don't put much stock in first-year eligibility voting. Okay, let me make that clear. In baseball, it's a very big deal. It is an extra badge of honor. In football, more people than not don't think of it as a big deal. But in baseball, you always hear, oh, he was elected in his first year of eligibility. There's like a little extra badge, even though they don't put anything special on the plaque. Okay, they don't. At least I don't think so. What they may make mention of is if that guy had like 98% of the votes. We know about, Mariano Rivera and Derek Jeter, what their vote count was. I think there might be mention on their plaques of that, possibly, but I'm not even sure, to be frank. So don't quote me on that. And if there's not, we don't need to spend 10 minutes correcting it. The point being, in baseball, first-year induction is considered an extra badge of honor. In football, in my 43 years of covering the Giants and the National Football League, I can count to you on one hand the amount of people who have identified first ballot Hall of Famers to me. It just doesn't carry as much clout as it does in baseball. Same thing with hockey and with basketball. Most people don't care what ballot you got in on. Okay? They don't. The point is, if the guy's a Hall of Famer and you know it and everybody else knows it, well, then put him in as soon as he is eligible to get in, if only because you don't want to clog up the voting process in later years. And certainly for older people, you don't want them to get inducted or elected when they're in poor health and they can't truly enjoy it with their families. I remember what Steve McMichael went through. I remember what Mick Tingelhoff went through. You folks remember when Hank Stram was finally voted into the Hall of Fame and he was in very poor health? That's not good. None of those three guys I just mentioned did anything in the latter years of their life to change their credentials. They were Hall of Famers when they retired, after the 5-year wait. In a player's case, coach's case, I believe it's a 1-year wait. They were Hall of Famers then, but the voters didn't recognize it. And they made these poor people wait. And then, after years and years and years and years, when they were in poor health, they finally got the phone call. Then you've got people who don't live to see the phone call because there are too many voters who decide they're going to put it off. They're going to put it off, and they're going to put it off. And remember, nothing is guaranteed about tomorrow. Hey, voters, Hall of Fame voters out there, nothing is guaranteed about tomorrow. So why would you make a worthy candidate wait any longer than he needs to wait? Bill Belichick and Eli Manning. I'm sorry, folks. They are Hall of Fame people. Belichick, there's not even a half-wit who could argue against his credentials. Tom Brady, Robert Kraft, Bill Belichick, all of them are Hall of Famers. The resumes speak for themselves. I know a bunch of people on the Hall of Fame committee who have said to me, Tom Coughlin, Mike Holmgren, and Mike Shanahan, all three, absolutely, I vote for all three of them to go in. Well, then what's the holdup? You know what the holdup is? The rules. The Hall of Fame Board of Directors and their rules. They state that you can only get one coach in per year. But you know what? If the people who vote, if the coaches committee, the blue ribbon coaches committee of the Hall of Fame, if that committee says Tom Coughlin, Mike Holmgren, and Mike Shanahan are all Hall of Famers, but now because of the rules, we can only put one in this year. And oh, okay, next year, one more. The year after that, oh, finally. So after 3 years, we'll get all three guys in, even though today the voters believe that they should be in. And they would vote all three in today if they were allowed to. So why? Why are we putting a limit on the amount of coaches who can go in every year? Why? It doesn't make any sense. Why should any two of those three men be forced to wait another year? And then one of those three men be forced to wait an additional year? Why? It just doesn't make any sense. They made Dan Reeves wait. And how did that turn out? Dan Reeves is now passed away and gone. And he will never, ever, despite being a lifer in the National Football League, despite being the director of personnel and head coach for a Broncos team that went to 3 Super Bowls, despite taking the Giants to the playoffs, despite taking the Atlanta Falcons to a Super Bowl, despite having a winning career, postseason record, despite being a player on championship teams and being an assistant coach on championship Cowboys teams, with all of that on his resume, because of the rules, Dan Reeves had to wait and wait and wait and wait and wait. And now it's too late. If Dan Reeves ever gets in, and I certainly hope he does, how is his family supposed to enjoy it with him gone? I'm sorry, people. I'm passionate about this. It makes me very, very angry. I'm not about disappointment on this one. I'm about anger. Because I see injustice being done. How about the fact that the selection committee of the Hall of Fame is made up of a slew of writers and media people, and the only two former players on the Hall of Fame committee are Dan Fouts and James Lofton, who are on the committee as at-large voters through their broadcast resumes. James Lofton with CBS, Dan Fouts with ESPN and ABC. I don't understand that. Football is such a complicated game. It is such a difficult game to play. How is it that you don't have some more Hall of Fame players being part of the voting process when those guys know what it took to get there? I would never pretend to be a qualified Hall of Fame voter, and I've covered the league for 43 years. I never played the game. These guys who played, they know. They know what it takes. They know who they were worried about. They know who could beat them. And they know who made them ooh and ah and drop their jaws, because they knew a Hall of Fame player when that guy either scared the dickens out of them or flat out beat them. They know. But there are two Hall of Fame players on the selection committee. How much sense does that make? Not to mention this ridiculous round by round system that the Hall of Fame uses. Instead of in baseball, where everybody gets a ballot, you vote for your 10 guys, the ballots go in, they calculate the ballots. Do you have enough of the percentage to get in? You're in. Done. What is this preposterous system? Where did they come up with this system? The Hall of Fame people, the board of directors. Where did they get this from? Some alien planet? That you got to narrow it down, first round, second round, finalists. You can only vote for so many people and so many category, and they got to get so many percentage in that round or they don't get through to the next round. What are you kidding me? This is not a game show, people. It's not a game show. Tell the voters. You get 10 votes, like they do in baseball. You get 10 votes. Everybody, vote. Instead, see, in baseball, every voter gets the ballot, and they do their own research, and they've got to figure it out on their own, based on the research that they can get their hands on. See, in the Pro Football Hall of Fame voting, the committee members, now they get on a video call. It used to be they'd meet in person, but they get on a video call, and each NFL city has a representative. They actually have two, but they have a representative that has to make the case. Do you believe this? Make the case for a player who came from his team. How does that make sense? I'm almost glad that this Belichick thing happened, because it is so preposterous, it is so embarrassing, it is so humiliating, in my opinion, for the Pro Football Hall of Fame, that maybe they're going to have to change things. Maybe we will get some more players on the committee Tony Dungy is on the Blue Ribbon Coaches Committee. He's the only coach. He's a Hall of Famer. At least he gets to vote in the coaches selection process. What are we doing, people? We're playing around with something that is prestigious. It is an incredible honor. It is the coup de grace of every single NFL person's career. Team-wise, being a champion, having a Super Bowl ring. No question. No question. That's number one. But the highest individual honor you can have is the Hall of Fame. And we're jerking around with round by round advancements into the voting process with all kinds of stipulations attached to it. What are we doing, people? Fix the system. Fix the committee. You know what's funny, people? I'm going to give you something else that's really funny. And this shows you how bad and messed up it is. It took forever for them to vote Wellington Mara in, which was another horrible embarrassment, I believe, for the league. But you guys know who Harry Carson is, right? 9-time Pro Bowler, handful of times All-NFL, Super Bowl champion. Harry Carson. He retired at the end of the 1998 season, was on injured reserve and retired. Did not get voted into the Hall of Fame until 2006. Now, you give him the 5-year wait period. That takes him to from 88 season. I'm sorry. Did I say 98? I meant 88. 1988. So now he's got to miss 5 years. Okay, fine. Take him to 93. So from 1993 to 2006, these Hall of Fame voters decided that one Harry Carson, who was clearly, without any dispute, not only a great Giant, but 9-time Pro Bowl when it was a little bit more discerning than it is now, because now they'll give a Pro Bowl out to anybody. Look at Shedeur Sanders. But it meant a little something more in those days when the game was actually played for real and the teams really hit and tried to win the game because they wanted the bonus money. 9-time Pro Bowler. And oh, by the way, also Super Bowl champion. You know what's funny? A few years ago when the National Football League celebrated its top 100 players of all time. Let me see, when exactly was that? What year was that? I'm gonna stop in just a few minutes, folks, and let you guys in and participate in this program. But I'm sorry, I'm just a little angry right now. Okay, I'm just a little angry because this topic really infuriates me. The NFL's all-time team, all-time top 100. I'm looking for the date. When was the NFL? 2019. In 2019, the NFL, put together a panel of media members, former players, and league personnel. Okay? A mixture. Former players, league personnel, and media members. And said, let's vote for the all-time NFL 100th anniversary team. And without question, Harry Carson made the list. So let me ask you something, folks. If you really want to evaluate the validity and the quality of the Pro Football Hall of Fame selection process. How is it that Harry Carson was one of, I think, 4 or 5 middle linebackers to be on the NFL's all-time 100th greatest players anniversary team, made it to that list in 2019, but for 13 years, the NFL, or the Pro Football Hall of Fame Selection Committee, did not think he was Hall of Fame worthy. They made this man wait for 13 years. But when the NFL got their panel together, he was on the all-time greatest NFL 100 list. How do you figure that? How do you justify that, selection committee? You made a man wait 13 years and he was on the NFL 100 all-time team. How do you justify making that man wait 13 years? I think I'm calmed down now. Okay. Let's go to the chats because I've had about enough of this Hall of Fame talk. It burns me up. Aiden Fink says, good evening, Paul. Good to be back after missing last week's show live. You need to be added to the HOF Voting Committee and replace one of those anti-Eli voters. All of them should be fired. Oh, you meant Hall of Fame Voting Committee. Look, I understand that there are people who are going to have different opinions. And whether or not we agree, that's one thing. But the system, the makeup of the committee, I think is extremely poor. And I think the system that they're using with this round by round thing is extremely broken. And I'm pretty sure if they just did a straight vote without doing this ridiculous round by round crap, even this very poor committee that's the selection process, I bet you even those people would have voted Eli Manning in. If the process was done with any logic. But it's not. It's broken. Armand Duda says, I had problems with how the Hall of Fame votes were done, but this is a whole new level. James O'Keefe, NY2TC. Good evening, Paul. Belichick and Eli getting passed over for Hall of Fame is exasperating. Is that the word that describes the rant that I just went on for the last 20 minutes? Or can we think of a few other adjectives? No, keep it clean, folks. We want a family show here. We don't need any bad adjectives. Jared Brown, 3289. Paul, I'm very concerned about the OC job since Monken's with the Browns. I'm also worried he might take Ravens' assistants. That goes to the point that I made in the opening portion of the program. The number one priority is to develop Jackson Dart. I like Kingsbury as OC. By the way, you know I'm a huge Davis Webb fan. And there is a report out there that the Giants are one of the teams that have sought permission to talk to Davis Webb. We shall see where that goes. Matt Seepersad. Hello, Giants family. Long time no see. Glad to be back with you. Been busy with life. Excited about the new hires. James O'Keefe, NY2TC. Wish the Giants kept Brasillo and Ferenc for O-line coaches. Who are you hearing Harbaugh wants to bring in? Well, here's the thing. I agree with you. I thought Brasillo and Ferenc did an outstanding job. And if it were me, again, I speak for me. I don't speak for anyone in the organization. I certainly would have done my best to keep those two guys. At the very least, if Carmen Brasillo felt that he had to go somewhere, I would have tried to keep Ferenc. At this point, we don't know. what that offensive line situation is going to be. Now, there was an assumption, and again, assumptions, I can't stand them and I don't like to make them, but there are those who did assume that the Ravens O-line coach would join Monken. Well, I already saw a report earlier tonight that the people in Cleveland believe that the Ravens O-line coach is going with Monken to the Browns. So you may want to cross that one off your list. Chris Spires, TH4ZD. I wonder who the Giants target OC next. Armand Duda says, never believe reports that the Giants haven't confirmed yet. He says, Kingsbury and Weiss Jr. are great choices. Chris Spires says, is Ole Miss offense an NFL offense? It's more, well, it's a blend. It's got a lot of college facets to it from the SEC. We know that. But again, that's the best division or conference in college football, right? At least it has been for some years. I know there's some debate now with Indiana doing what they did. I get it. But you get a lot of very, very good offensive minds from the SEC that come into the NFL. But of course, remember, Joe Judge came from the NFL and was down there as an assistant with Ole Miss on the offensive side of the ball. So they also brought some influence. Lane Kiffin himself had been an NFL and an NCAA head coach. So he brought some of both to that job. Chris also says, what about Davis Webb? Yep, I get it. Brad Eubank, 3784, says linebacker. I'm not sure what that refers to, unless he's looking at linebackers in the Shrine Bowl or the Senior Bowl. Neymar Sekon, 7756. Who do you think offensive coordinator would be for Giants, Davis Webb or Nate Scheelhaase? Excuse me. We know Webb currently has a job with the Bronx. I believe Nate currently has a job with the Rams. I don't know if Nate received a permission call from the Giants. Apparently, the reports say Davis Webb has. So let's see. He also says, I'm angry Eli Manning was skipped again for the Hall of Fame. Did you get the sense that I was angry too? Again, it's a report. It's not confirmed, but The Athletic apparently says that they've got the confirmation. Brad Eubank, 3784, says it's ridiculous. He also says Pro Bowl is even worse. Armand Duda says if Belichick isn't first ballot, there's no meaning to first ballot anymore. Again, I never thought there was any meaning to football first ballot anyway. I could care less. But, again, why make a guy wait? Hirsch for Real 201 says, hello, Paul. And I say hello back to you. Thanks for joining us. Please, by all means, if anybody wants to get on a video call or an audio call, you got the QR code up in the corner of the screen, and you also got the slug here on the bottom of the screen. We don't have to do chats, okay? Saves my voice if I don't have to read all these things. Armand says Coach Coughlin will be further delayed because of this Belichick snub. You're right. You're absolutely right. Everybody gets delayed. The pipeline gets clogged. Why are we only allowing one head coach a year to be inducted into the Pro Football Hall of Fame? Why? Give me a good reason why that rule should be in play. Tell me, what is the purpose of that rule? If there are multiple Hall of Famers that deserve to be in and they can get the votes necessary, then let them all go in. What are we waiting for, people? Armand says Phil Simms was great enough to be in the Hall of Fame. His performance in Super Bowl 21 is worthy alone. not to mention Carl Banks and Mark Bavaro. Armand, I don't even want to get into an argument over individual people because to me, you're always going to have different opinions, right? I know there are people who have an opinion that they say Eli's resume and they'll point to their stupidity or their stupid argument about the regular season one-loss record. Okay? That's the one they love to throw in Eli's face, and they love to throw in his face also no all-pro voting. 4 Pro Bowls, but no all-pros. Those are the 2 things they love to throw in his face. Which, by the way, when you have the scale, okay, the postseason record, the Super Bowl MVPs, the longevity and the durability, okay, the overall stats that he put up, you know what that does to the scale? I don't disagree that the critics have a few small, tiny snowballs to throw at Eli's resume. They do have small, tiny snowballs. You're right. I wish he would have been an all-pro. I wish he would have had more Pro Bowls. I absolutely do. I wish he would have won even more Super Bowls and more Super Bowl MVPs. He only won 2. I'm so sorry. And oh, yes, I'm sorry he didn't play double the amount of straight games without being sidelined by injury. He should have played 500 straight games without injury. Would that have been enough for you people? See, they got their little snowballs. Let them play with their little snowballs. Okay? They want to do that, let them do that. But the system is broke. The round-by-round system is foolish. The people who are on the committee, the makeup of the people on the selection committee, it doesn't make sense. I don't want to get into individual candidacies because what this Belichick and Manning thing did for me, it just became an explosive issue because it was enough to want to blow the lid off the whole thing, the committee and the process. Sean Jackson, 3203. Good evening, Paul. I agree with you 100%. Belichick should never have been snubbed for the Hall of Fame. Who are the voters crazy enough not to vote for Belichick? Shake my head. How about this? If this committee is so great, if they're so worthy, and they're so valued, and they have so much integrity, how about all of the votes get made public? How about that, Hall of Fame? Why don't you do that? If you believe so much in these people that they get to vote, and you like this system so much, how about you make all the results public so that people do have to stand up for what they believe in? How about that? Armand Duda says Tiki Barber should be in 2. That's only Giants players deserving. The amount for the entire league is unfathomable. Well, yeah. Oh, yeah. That's why I don't want to talk about individual players here. This is a bigger picture problem. Armand says there should be at least 50% of players and coaches in the Hall voting. You say at least 50% of the vote. Wow, they don't even meet in person. They used to meet in person. They used to. Okay? Right before the Super Bowl, all these people who are going to vote on the committee would come to the Super Bowl site. They'd get in a room. They'd argue for hours. And they'd vote. And it was done. And then a short while later, there was a press conference to announce the results. That's how it went down until COVID. And since COVID, now it's all done on video call. Video conference calls. That's how it's all done now. Armand says, without Wellington Mara, the league wouldn't be what it is today. You're 100% correct. I'm just grateful that he was finally inducted, and he was when he was healthy and alive to enjoy it, and his family was able to enjoy it. That's the most beautiful thing of all. How valuable is a Hall of Fame selection to someone once they're too old or ill to enjoy it, or if they have passed away? How valuable is that Hall of Fame selection at that point? And how valuable is it really to the family at that point? Armand Duda says, Captain for life. Yes, that would be Harry Carson. Aiden Fink says, I have a shortcut on my phone and replaced HOF with Hofstra. Ha. Okay. Aiden, it's okay. I get you. Sandman 328 says, not surprised anymore. Hall of NFL is corrupt. Aiden Fink says, Paul, what do you think the Giants' biggest priority this offseason is, in your opinion? I think it's the offensive and defensive coordinators and the offensive line coach. I think those selections are probably more important than anybody they sign in free agency or anybody they draft. And I'm not kidding. Creative Styles 2733. Good evening, Paul. Question, what do you think the Giants' record will be this year, your opinion? My friend, I don't know what their 53 is yet. They got a 90-man roster. They've got significant free agents in Wan'Dale Robinson, right? Jermaine Illuminor. Significant free agents right off the bat. Malik Neighbors is coming off of a very serious injury. So is Cam Scatterbo. These are issues. Daniel Bellinger's a free agent. I think if it were me, I would bring him back. And I don't think it would cost that much. Micah McFadden is an unrestricted free agent. I would certainly bring him back too. Again, he's coming off a Liz Frank in his foot. So there's a lot to be determined yet. I tell people all the time, when I see the 53, that final week before the first game of the season, that's when I tell you realistically what I believe this team should be. Last August, I said 7-10, 8-9, really good chance, 8-9, maximum 9-8, if the ball bounces the right way. But the roster was a 7-10, 8-9 caliber roster. I still believe that. There were other things that came into play that sunk the season. Harlem X is back. Hey, everybody. Hey, Paul. Hope everybody is keeping warm tonight. That's a good wish. Dylan 9329. Mansour Delane, best DB in the draft, leaning more towards taking him in round 1. I understand that. Oh, yeah. I understand that. Daniel Jeremiah has him. Yes, folks. It is the 1, 2, 3, 4. It is the 5th week of January, and Mel Kiper's first mock is out. So has Daniel Jeremiah put out his first mock. I believe, let me just make sure I got this right. Yes. Mel Kiper Jr. has Carnell Tate, the Ohio State wide receiver, going to the Giants. As I sit here today, and I am only beginning now to do my draft prep, I will be at the Combine, obviously, as I have for many, many years now. As I sit here tonight, I'm leaning Carnell Tate at number 5 for the Giants. But, and I want to just, let me just see 100% for sure. I believe, yes, here is the Daniel Jeremiah mock draft. It did go up 3 days ago. And at number 5, I believe, yes. He does have the LSU corner, Delane going to the Giants at number 5. And if I'm not pronouncing that right, I don't think I'm wrong, but if I'm not, excuse me, please. Again, I don't watch a ton of college football until we get to the playoffs, the 2 All-Star games, and now I start to begin digging in to my draft preparations. So I apologize if I have not pronounced that name 100% correctly, but I do know who he is, and I'm very much aware of him, and I do believe he is the best corner in the draft. Queensboro brother, one of our regulars, says, hello, Paul. I know it's a stretch, but Kubiak would suffice as an OC for the G-Men. The Hall of Fame voting only shows us there are quite a few misanthropes on this planet. Always wanted to use that word. Very nice. Very nice. You know what? I think the interesting part with the offensive coordinator search is that, you know, we're all thinking OCs, right? And Kubiak is the OC with Seattle. I don't know that he's going to leave there. Okay, first of all. But here's the interesting part. Are there potentially, I mentioned Charlie Weiss Jr. before, are there potentially college coordinators that might be a great fit for the Giants, especially from the SEC, which is where Jackson Dart played? Is there somebody? Well, we mentioned Kingsbury. He was an NFL head coach before. You know, is there somebody out there who maybe was an NFL head coach who potentially might be a good OC for them? Does it have to be somebody who has a connection to Harbaugh in his past? I don't know the answer to that. And at least I'm man enough to admit that to you. I'm not going to assume anything. Harlem X says, I want to get on a video call so bad, but once again, I'm handcuffed. I will definitely be calling again eventually, but for now, it's the chat for me. That's okay, Harlem X. You know why? When you call in, we usually wind up extending the program a lot more longer than I wanted to. It's just 9 o'clock now, Eastern time. I'll probably, depending upon how much more we got here, I might take it another half hour. I don't necessarily think I'll go past the bottom of the hour, but I think if you called in, we probably would do 20 minutes on our own because you always have very, very good calls. And I do appreciate when you do call, for sure. I really do. But sometimes it does back us up a little bit. But that's my fault because I could always make the call a little shorter. Ox Tommy 21. Giants, Eagles, Ravens, and others. Quite frankly, Ox Tommy 21, also the Jets, looking for offensive coordinators right now. Yeah, unless the Jets named one in the last few hours, and I don't think that they have. But I am not sure. Did I see anything on the Jets? I'm not sure. Now, what has been apparently floated out there is that we do know, and maybe I was remiss in saying this before, we know that the Titans, right? The Titans have reportedly lined up former Giants head coach Brian Daboll to be their offensive coordinator. And now it's coming down the pike that quarterbacks coach Shea Tierney, who was with Daboll here with the Giants, apparently, according to Mike Garafolo of NFL Network, he is saying that you'll be seeing Shea Tierney as the quarterbacks coach of Cam Ward on the Tennessee Titans staff. And it's also being reported elsewhere as well that Titans Tribe is reporting that looks like Carmen Brasillo is also going down to Tennessee with Daboll and is going to wind up being the Titans offensive line coach. So, that's the coaching carousel. It just continues to move. It doesn't stop for anybody. It just keeps playing and keeps playing and keeps playing and going around and around and around and around. And somehow you got to find a horse to sit on. Iman Perry says the Pro Football Hall of Fame is a joke. You know the shame of it? The shame of it is this whole thing is dragged that entity down into the basement. And it shouldn't, because it's not fair to the guys who are inducted. For all those people who have those bronze busts in the Hall of Fame, and I've been fortunate enough to visit, and it's awesome. It's an awesome, awesome place. And to go into that room with the busts, it gives you goosebumps. It's truly incredible. It's very, very cool. And when John Madden said, when they turn off the lights and they close the doors and they lock the locks at the end of the evening, he believes that all those busts start talking to each other about the game. The game. That's what should matter the most. The game. Somehow, I don't know why, and I don't know how, too many times people lose focus and they don't remember that. And they get tied up in all this other crap. Ox Tommy 21 says, Otis Anderson, Dave Meggett, Mark Ingram, some of my favorites. All former Giants. Otis Anderson, by the way, is another one of those players who has a case for the Hall of Fame and can't seem to get much traction. And I don't understand it. If you saw Otis Anderson play, and I'm talking about from the time he was a Rookie of the Year with the St. Louis Cardinals. Yes, I know some of you are too young and you don't remember the St. Louis Cardinals when they played at Busch Stadium, where the baseball St. Louis Cardinals used to play. I know you don't remember. I understand. Go onto YouTube and check it out. Otis Anderson was incredible. A sensational superstar running back. MVP of a Super Bowl. Two-time Super Bowl champion. I know, one as a deep backup for Joe Morris with Super Bowl 21. I get it. He still has 2 Super Bowl rings. Okay? MVP of Super Bowl 25. Was a NFL Comeback Player of the Year. Was an NFL Rookie of the Year. Was a 10,000-yard rusher at a time, much like in baseball, where now you got a whole slew of guys over 500 home runs. Well, when Otis Anderson eclipsed 10,000 career rushing yards at the time, I want to say he was like 7th all-time on the NFL rushing list. Now he's dropped down significantly because a lot of people have passed him. But at the time, and Otis changed his style from being very quick to being a bruiser after he got to the Giants. And he pounded it out. I don't know why he doesn't get any traction. And Tiki Barber doesn't get any traction. And I don't understand that either. His last 3 years with the Giants, probably next to Marshall Faulk, okay, may have been the greatest 3-year stretch of any running back in NFL history. But there's always going to be people with small snowballs to throw at you. Iman Perry says, I don't like Bill Belichick, but he should be in there right now. Aiden Fink says, the regulars of the Big Blue Breakdown Live should be on the committee instead. Well, Aiden, that would be against my point, where I think you should have more Hall of Fame people, whether it's coaches, players, GMs. I think the committee needs to have more of those people on it. Because after all, those people know what it takes to be a Hall of Famer. They lived it. Don't you think they can identify it better than any of the people on the committee now? Brad Eubank, 3784. Yeah, right now they just get to hide behind anonymity. Great idea, Paul. Mikey C, 6894. Why not Davis Webb? Well, Davis Webb has some options. Let's make that very clear. Whether or not the Giants situation becomes a reality in terms of an interview and an offer, he has options, including staying with the Broncos and perhaps being promoted to offensive coordinator under Sean Payton. Right now, he's the passing game coordinator. There's a potential there that because they just got rid of their OC, they could just promote Davis Webb internally, and that's the end of that. Ox Tommy 21 says, how about letting Tay Banks play wide receiver and punt return too, in addition to kickoff return and cornerback? Oh, my man. Look, he was a sensational kickoff returner. We saw that for sure, and he loved doing it too. He's got 1 year left on his contract. This is his contract year. I am hopeful that whoever the new defensive coordinator is, okay, that they are playing a system and a scheme. We believe, according to what's been written, that Denard Wilson's the guy. Well, Tay Banks is a very specific type of corner. And that's part of the problem with the way that the game has developed, with all of these specialists, guys who play certain schemes much better than others, and vice versa. He's a press man corner. Under Shane Bowen, that's not what they were asking him to do. It did not suit his skill set very well at all. Look, even the most harshest critics out there of Tay Banks, and I know there's a slew of you out there, but even all of you would have to admit his best year with the Giants, and it wasn't bad, was his rookie season. He showed a lot in his rookie season, a lot of flashes, rookie mistakes for sure, as they always litter a player's rookie season. That's to be expected. That's part of what you get with an NFL rookie. But Tay Banks showed a lot of skills and a lot of promise and a lot of upside as a rookie under Wink Martindale in a press man scheme. Now, part of it is his own fault. When you're a pro, you have to adjust to the coaching and to the scheme, just as the coach should try to adjust to you as a player. So I will say, Tay Banks could have done some more growing up, and he could have adapted better, or at least tried harder to adapt better to what Shane Bowen was asking him to do. But it is quite clear that a lot of the Giants' defensive players dramatically underachieved under Shane Bowen. When you have not just one player or two players, but several players who underachieve under a specific coordinator, chances are it wasn't the players who created that underachieving production. And that's about as nice as I could say it. So, Denard Wilson is a press man, corner-based defensive coordinator. So, if he is in fact the Giants DC, I would expect that one of the things he's going to want to do, or whoever the new DC might be, whenever that official announcement is made, that person's going to want to sit down with the defense, but certainly the players who underachieved over the last two seasons, and say, hey, I've seen your tape. I think I understand what your toolbox is. Let's see what we can do to maximize your production. Because it's my job as the defensive coordinator to get the best out of you. And I think I've got a style that is more like what Wink Martindale was, not necessarily as blitz happy, for sure, because Wink is over the top blitz happy, but a lot more generally along that style. And any of you guys who did better in that environment, and I'm talking, this is me, Paul, talking to you, Tay Banks, and to you, Bobby Okereke. Okay? You guys should absolutely see a nice bump in your production as we return you to the philosophical type of scheme that better fits your toolbox. Because I think Bobby Okereke in the last month of the season, after outside linebackers coach Charlie Bullen was installed as the interim defensive coordinator, did you not notice the difference, folks? Bobby Okereke was playing much more like the Bobby Okereke of the 2002 season. Right? 2003 season. I'm sorry. Yeah, 2003. Bowen was in charge in 2004 and 2005. So let me go back and just check my numbers again on Bobby, because I'm a big Bobby Okereke fan, but I must admit I'm a tad confused. Let me check. When he came to the Giants, in 23, did he not? Sure he did. Because 2000, it was 23, 24, 25. 26 is going to be his fourth season. And yes, as I recheck the numbers, that is exactly what I wanted to say. Bobby Okereke, 149 tackles, 2 interceptions, 4 forced fumbles, 10 passes defensed. That's a career high. 11 tackles for a loss. That's a career high. 6 quarterback hits. That's a career high. All of those things came during the 2023 season. And then the last 2 seasons, not as much. Although we saw a surge in the final month of the season when there was another change in the defensive coordinator spot. So yes, I expect more out of Okereke and out of Banks in 2026, with hopefully the appropriate change at defensive coordinator. Because as you know, it has already been widely reported, even though there was no announcement, it has been widely reported that Charlie Bullen is going back to coaching the edge rushers and the outside linebackers. But I do believe that you saw some of his aggressive philosophies definitely improve the Giants' defense over the final month of the season. At least if you had your eyes open, you could obviously see it. It was dramatic. Aiden Fink says, stay warm. Freedom 341 or 341 NYG. Good evening, Paul. What do you think about bringing Carmen back? Go Giants. No, again, we just told you it's being reported out of Tennessee that Carmen Brasillo apparently is heading to the Titans. So doesn't look like that's in the cards. Mikey 6894 says, trade View, spat down, and draft Sonny Styles. That's the linebacker out of Ohio State. Heck of a player. But again, I'm wrestling with this. I'm not saying that the value isn't there. Obviously, Sonny Styles is going to be a top 10 pick in the draft. I think that's pretty obvious. The quality is there. There's no doubt. He's a legit player. We all know that. You don't have to do any studying to figure that out. But what did the Giants do to get impact when you believe Okereke is going to be himself again? You believe that Micah McFadden, who was nearly healed enough to play at the end of the season but didn't quite make it, he's a solid player. Do you do that? Or do you, again, go to the four biggest needs of the team? And how much does need get involved in your draft analysis? They definitely need another corner. They definitely need another defensive lineman. They definitely need another wide receiver. And depending upon what happens with Van Roten and Illuminor, they definitely could use another offensive lineman. Linebacker, you could say there's a little bit of a question there, but I don't think it's one of the top four priorities. That doesn't mean that Sonny Styles is not a terrific prospect, because he is. And you certainly wouldn't sneeze at him if he got picked by the Giants. Let me tell you that. Oh, no. You certainly wouldn't sneeze at him. But is that the best pick for them to make? Dylan9329 says, risky, but the kid is unbelievable. True technician, can play anywhere on the field. And he's referring to the corner we talked about earlier. I get it. Dylan9329, I think there are a bunch of wide receiver twos in this draft. Could pair up with Malik. A sure-handed catcher, possession receiver, moves the chains. Let's see Leak move around to the slot more. Again, the one question you have to have about receiver, and this is why it's definitely a bigger need than linebacker. Malik Neighbors coming off a serious injury situation. And Wan'Dale Robinson, in all likelihood, is going to get a big, fat, juicy offer that's going to entice him to go to another team. Okay? So wide receiver, to me, is definitely a bigger need than linebacker. It's not just as simple as saying, okay, draft a wide receiver two on the second day of the draft. I don't think it's that simple. Do you want Jackson Dart to really be what he can be? You got to get him another receiver who's going to go make plays for him. Finish. How many times have you heard me say on this program and every other program I've ever been on? Make plays for your quarterback. Finish the play on the other end of the pass. How many times have you seen it in the playoffs, folks? Guys making plays for their quarterback, making the catch, getting the first down, winning the 50-50 ball. It's a big deal. The quarterback is never going to be what he can be if you don't have receivers who will make plays for him. And I get it, because in years past, I know the truth. Yes, you can usually find defensive backs and wide receiver sleepers later in the draft rather than earlier. That is true. But that's only if, in all honesty, it's mostly guys who can make your 53. Yes, you can find make-it players easier at DB and wide receiver than any other position. You can find make-it on your 53 players later on, even in undrafted rookie free agency. But usually, if you want to get the receivers who are going to make a play for your quarterback and make sure that that quarterback gets viewed as the great talent that you believe him to be, you're gonna have to go, in all likelihood, you're gonna have to use a high draft choice to do it. Harlem X says, I'm absolutely going after college coaches for head coaching jobs in the NFL, but I would definitely snatch a college coach for a coordinator job to build a tree for the future. I think he means not going after college coaches for NFL head coaching job, because then he contradicts and says he would do it for a coordinator. And that's where I'm at, Harlem X, especially in New York. I'm all about experienced guys who have NFL head coaching experience, or at least big time college head coaching experience. I know Parcells wasn't that, but Coughlin did. He had Jacksonville head coaching experience and obviously Boston College. I know Parcells really didn't. I get it. I understand. So before anybody tries to throw that back at me, I know. But for the most part, I'm all about it. And that was a different time also. You know, today nobody has any patience. They don't give coaches 5-year plans. They tell them after a year or two, if you don't win, you're done. You don't get 5 years anymore. Heck, Parcells almost only got 1 year. But today, with all the newspapers who love to create firestorms and the social media that love to create firestorms and the content creators that love to create firestorms, the microwave gets turned on to ultra high so quick that if you're in New York, I think you got to hire a guy who's already had winning head coaches experience in the National Football League first. And I do that with any sport, whether it's NHL, NBA, NFL. I know, crazy, right? Aaron Boone didn't have it. And look at how many games he's won for the Yankees. I know, there can be an exception. But for the most part, I would very strongly shy away from someone who did not have head coaching experience at the professional level. All right, let's finish up these chats before we kick it out of here. Sean Jackson, 3203. Hey, Paul, what's the environment around the Giants facility now that Harbaugh is the Giants head coach? I have not seen John. He is very, very busy working upstairs, doing everything that he's doing to try to get this thing together. So there's certainly a breath of fresh air in terms of strong optimism. I mean, look at the man's resume, right? 12 playoff appearances in 18 NFL seasons, a Super Bowl, only one season with fewer than 8 wins. What's there not to like about that resume? So, yes, there's an anticipation, if you will, that the Giants are going to turn this around quickly. Dylan 9329, not retaining Carmen Brasillo might bite Harbaugh. His guy just went with Monken to the Browns, lost out on 2 guys right there. Dylan, we had that conversation earlier in the program. Yes. Mikey C says trade down a few spots, draft Sonny Styles. Harlem Ox Tommy 21 says I'm leaning this way too to Harlem X. Brad Eubank 3784 says, I remember a story where Otis told a story about a rookie coming to the Giants and telling him, I used to love watching this running back from the Cardinals. His name was O.J. Anderson. Otis said, yeah, that was me. Yeah, because when he was with the Giants, we all called him Otis. We didn't call him O.J. He was O.J. with the Cardinals. With the Giants, we all called him Otis. In fact, to this day, I still call him Otis. One of the most awesome guys, too. Great, great dude. Skate Habitat 24. How much money Wan'Dale Robinson going to want, you think? Over 90 catches 2 years in a row. Over 1,000 yards this season. Career year. Think of it this way. Darius Slayton got, 12 a year? to be frank, look at the production. He's certainly going to want a lot more than that. But as with any deal, the details, the guaranteed money is usually the real tricky spot. So will he want a 3 or 4 year deal? I'm sure he will. But the guaranteed money is where it's going to get really sticky with him. And I expect that, he's going to get in the high teens, average salary per season. It'll be in the high teens probably. I don't know how much it'll approach 20, but that's my guess. And I don't think the Giants are going to chase him to the bank. I just don't. Isaac Moore makes a great point. Isaac Moore, 1248. Caleb Downs is a beast, always on the ball. You could make a case for Downs at 5, especially after people say he could have the same impact in this league that Kyle Hamilton did for the Baltimore Ravens. And should I add this? There is a propensity for the defensive coordinator, if it should be Denard Wilson, again, unconfirmed, to play with a big nickel look, which is usually a 3-safety package. Well, guess what? Dane Belton is coming off a career season where he had 100 tackles. Was great on special teams this year, but specifically had 100 tackles on defense for a career high. In fact, let me throw this at you. He was tied for 11th in the NFL in special teams tackles. How about that? No, wait a minute. Let me check it again. Tied for 6th. He had a combined 20 special teams tackles, tied for 6th most in the league. Dane Belton. Yeah, he turned out to be a really, really good special teams cover guy. He always was good on special since he got here. This year, he took it to a whole nother level. 20 special teams tackles, tied for 6th in the NFL. He was tied for 11th among safeties in the NFL with 100 tackles. That was a career high. I don't know. I think he wants to stay, but I don't know. And how much money is he going to get? Would you want to use the 5th pick on Downs? The value's there. Everybody seems to believe he's certainly good value with that pick. Is it a positional value thing? No, it's not. Safeties usually don't get taken that high. But defensive impact players do. Is he enough of a defensive impact player for you to take him at 5? Another very interesting question. He will be in my collection of players as I narrow things down and we get to late April. I'll know a lot more at the Combine for sure. But yes, I'm telling you right now, Downs will be in my cluster, and definitely Tate's going to be in my cluster at 5, if that's where the Giants pick. They would both be in my cluster at 5. I'm going to probably put together a cluster of 4 players because we know the quarterback, Mendoza, is going to go number 1 to the Raiders. So picks 2, 3, and 4 will be position players. So you have to have 4 position players that you want to pick at 5. So I'll put 4 players in my cluster. Yes, Downs is going to be one of them, and Tate's going to be another one. I'm pretty sure. Isaac Moore, 1242, says, let's get Davis Webb in here. Skate Habitat 24 says, I like the new DC. Well, we'll see if he in fact is. Armand Duda says, Charlie Bullen got the production for the whole defense to improve in the short time he had. Hope the reports turn out to be true that he is staying. I concur. Isaac Moore, 1248, says exactly what you need to remember. No guarantee you get anyone if we trade down. All it takes is one person to really dig the guy that you want. And they could move up if they really want him. Or maybe they're already ahead of you and they take him. JDI asks me, who would you choose or would you draft at 5? I've just given you 2 players who will be in my 4-player cluster. Ox Tommy 21 says, I would go first round Caleb Downs, second round Casey Concepcion, third round Jacob Rodriguez. JDI says, Paul, Titans have a ton of cap space. Would it surprise you if Dable convinces the Titans to offer him big money? Who are we talking about? Are we talking about Wan'Dale Robinson, perhaps? That's going to be my guess. And I'll tell you what, Brian Daboll loves Wan'Dale Robinson. He really does. And by the way, so did Mike Kafka, who's now reportedly the passing game coordinator with the Detroit Lions. I could make a very strong case that the Titans or the Lions would love to get their hands on Wan'Dale Robinson. Dylan 9329, need a true cornerback, more CB1 more than a wide receiver. Dart put up 24 points a game with essentially nobody for weapons outside of Wan'Dale. Dylan, I agree that cornerback is one of the four significant needs on the team. Now, here's the thing. Do you have 3 starting wide receivers going into week 1? Well, you have Slayton. You don't know if you have Wan'Dale Robinson. You don't know if you have Malik Neighbors for week 1 because of his serious injury. So you have 1 solid answer, 1 maybe, and 1 no answer at all. All right. What do you have at cornerback? You need 3 starting cornerbacks if you're going to go with a nickel. You have Phillips starting at the nickel. You have 1. You have Paulson Adebo, 2, starting at 1 corner. He is another one who needs a bounce-back season. He was not nearly the guy who played for the Saints. Was hurt a little this year, but let's face it, he was not the same player. But he's paid big money. He's going to be here, and he's going to start. So you have a starting slot. You have a starting corner. I forgot to mention Cordell Flott earlier during this program. I think he's going to get some pretty good offers from other teams who are going to want to pay him handsomely. And the Giants may not be able to chase him. But there is Tay Banks, who, if the new coordinator is able to resuscitate his career, you now have 3 starting corners. You have Phillips, you have Adebo, and you have Banks. Compared to 1, sketchy, and none at wide receiver. So, Dylan, I disagree with you. Your analysis is incorrect. The Giants certainly have a bigger need at wide receiver than they do at cornerback. That's not to say that they can't take the LSU corner at 5. Because he's that good of a prospect. It doesn't mean they can't take him at 5. Maybe they should take him at 5. But that would be because they grade him as a higher prospect. It would not be because they have a bigger need at corner than they do at receiver, because that is totally untrue. It is exactly the opposite. Okay, let's see here. Isaac Moore, 12:48, and we've already gone past. We're going to wind up at 48 after the hour, I'm sure. Isaac Moore, 12:48. Kingsbury seems like a great fit, but maybe too good. He would leave in 2 to 3 years or maybe sooner. Armand Duda says Parcells one of a kind. Absolutely. JDI says, Paul, with Harbaugh at the helm, do you expect practices to be more intense and much longer? Hard to say. Honestly, hard to say. Because just because whatever he did at Baltimore he did, he's got to figure out the tenor of this team here. I do think he'll do something very, very similar or the same than what he does in Baltimore, but will the practices be exactly the same? I don't know. I do expect them to be probably a little bit tougher. Yeah, maybe a little bit tougher. And maybe, remember, the CBA controls the length of the practices and what you can do. Now, there are certain times when every head coach will peel back a little bit under those maximum requirements. Would I expect Harbaugh to push more toward the maximum requirements more often when it comes to the timing and to the hitting or the amount of roughness that goes on? Yes, I would. I think that's a legit anticipation, but I don't want to say for sure until I get to see him out here at East Rutherford. Mikey C 6894 is P-Dot. The G-Men need their future middle linebacker. I think Bobby Okereke still has, I know he's still under contract, and I still think he has another really good season left in him. Now, future, you're right. You're right. I don't know about 27 and beyond. And when you draft, you have to consider that too. I understand. That's why if the Giants take Styles, again, 5 for a middle linebacker, most people would tell you that's too high. I tend to agree. But that doesn't mean that the player can't be a great player and an impact player. So I don't know if he's going to be in my cluster of 4, but I know if they move down, and I don't think they're going to move down because I don't think they can. I don't think very many suitors are going to come up and trade for the 5th spot. I don't see that being very likely, okay? I just don't. So to me, I'm thinking, probably not. I'd have to move down to probably take Styles, and I just don't see that trade. Tizvimirazi High 4667. Downs is a dog leader big time, safety, and Harbaugh values that position. And you're right. You're right. I just told you. I'm probably going to wind up with him in my 4-player cluster. Okay? I get it. Skate Habitat 24. Yeah, I hope they get Downs badly. He's a beast. Stephen DLR7XG. Crazy question. Did Dable ever pen a goodbye to Giants team or fans? I sure don't remember one. No, I don't believe that he did. All right. Mikey C6894. Sonny Styles is a combination of Jesse Armstead and Derek Brooks. It's about the best player who's going to make your team better. That he's any given Sunday style. Says he is gifted. He was a safety who will turn inside linebacker. He's still learning. He is worth more than a wide receiver. I think a lot of people believe he's going to be an impact player in this league. I'm not going to argue with you on that one. Okay? No, of course not. Look at the program he's coming out of. I mean, talk about a powerhouse, right? No, I'm sure he's going to be very good. I'm not disagreeing with you. And he might wind up being one of my 4 cluster players. I don't know that he will, but he might be. So let's relax. It's JDJ, by the way. It's not JDL. It is JDJ. I can read it better over here than I can in the middle of the screen. Yeah, sorry, Paul. I'm old. Yes, that question was about Titans potentially offering Wan'Dale big money since Dabes likes him. Yeah. I could see it. And I could see the Lions doing the same. Mikey C, 6894. Dart needs a proven OC in the NFL. Isaac Moore, 1248. You think Patullo would get an interview for OC? How many how many times have you seen his name for any spots from the Eagles guy? Because he's obviously gone with the Eagles. Patullo, I'm looking here. Has he been listed in connection with anybody? I'm not seeing Patullo. I'm not seeing Patullo listed anywhere as getting requested interviews. He was fired from the Eagles, as you guys know, Kevin Patullo, fired from the Eagles, and I have not seen his name attached to any other team at the moment. But yes, he does have experience in the league, and obviously has worked some with Jalen Hurts, who does have some running capabilities. And I believe that Hurts is a running back playing quarterback, just like Jackson Dart has certainly some of those running back characteristics. Tough, physical, etc., etc. I feel bad every time we get this particular guy up on the screen because I butcher the tag. Tizvim Mirizari High. I'm gonna just call him TSV for short. Downs is the best player in the draft. So says Miz. Oh, he wants me to call him Miz. Excellent. Remind me of that the next show. Miz says Downs is the best player in the draft. I think that's absolutely possible. Big Blue Dosia, 1975, says Downs is the guy 100%. A lot of people liking Downs, and I don't have a problem with that. I'm surprised Tate hasn't gotten more love on our message board, but it is what it is. All right, folks. Well, we're going to be back with you again next Wednesday night at 8 p.m. Eastern Time for another edition of the Big Blue Breakdown Live. And of course, depending upon what news warrants, not only will we try to discuss the pertinent topics of the day as they regard Big Blue and the New York Football Giants, but also if it happens to be significant league-wide news, or maybe we'll just wind up doing some really big focusing on some of the Shrine Bowl and Senior Bowl prospects. Let me just say this, because we're just about done with the program right now. I saved my Senior Bowl, my Shrine Bowl notes. I know at some point during next week's show, regardless of what the news is, we will go over some Shrine Bowl and some Senior Bowl notes. I know it'll be a week later, but we still have plenty of time till the combine and to the draft. The stuff is not going to grow mold. It's not going to go anywhere. The notes that I took off for the Shrine Bowl are still here. They're in pen. They're good. They're not going to fade away. They're not going to get erased. It's quite all right. We will still have the opportunity to talk about all of those prospects from the last two All-Star games, or from these two significant All-Star games. We'll have some time to do that next week, I'm sure, unless news just explodes like a volcano and we have so much up-to-date news that we don't have time to talk about the prospects. But that won't be in the plan. All right, so remember, I'm at Giants WFAN. You know what my Twitter handle is. Always, please, by all means, you can always keep track of me over there. I'm on Big Blue Kickoff Live on the Giants program daily during weekdays, as you know, 12:30 p.m. Eastern Time. You can always call me over there as well, or hit me up on Twitter at GiantsWFAN, should you feel compelled to at any time during the course of the day. And remember, all of your Giants news is always available at New York Giants on SI, part of their media network and YouTube channel, as we come to you each and every week on Wednesday night at 8 p.m. Eastern Time. Until next time, I'm Paul Dottino. So long, everybody, and thank you so much for joining us this evening.